Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District Board meeting. It is Wednesday, August 26, 2026 at 3 p.m. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Blyle. Brown.
Here.
Fasella.
Here.
Friedman.
Here.
Nudo. Ula.
Here.
Barnes.
Here.
Quorum present.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as distributed?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The primary purpose of this public hearing is to receive input from the public on the Consolidated Vehicle Procurement Program Grant application project from the Illinois Department of Transportation for the procurement of up to 7 medium-duty paratransit vans for ADA services. Beginning on August 20th, 2026, the notice of public hearing was made available on the district's website, mtd.org, under public hearing documents. The notice of public hearing appeared in the News Gazette on August 19th, 2026, and the affidavit of publication is available for inspection. Are there any comments? Hearing none, I declare this public hearing on the Consolidated Vehicle Procurement Program Grant application closed. Next on our agenda is the audience participation. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the board on any other topic? Hearing none, we're going to move on to the next agenda item. Is there a motion to approve the Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District Board meeting minutes from July 29th, 2026, open session?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now, is there a motion to approve the Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District Board meeting minutes from July 29th, 2026, closed session?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll move on to communications. Are there any communications from the board? Seeing none, we'll move on to action items. The first action item is to consider Resolution 2026-12, Consolidated Vehicle Procurement Program Grant Application.
Chair, sorry, we skipped an item.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And it was the least important item on the agenda. It was my report.
Thank you. Let's go to the Managing Director's report. Do you have anything to report?
I will keep it very brief. So this is a statistical report on the first month of the fiscal year, so we have 1 month's worth of data, and so far the year is starting out with just shy of a 2% increase in ridership. So the total July ridership was 376,387, and that is a 1.7% increase. And that is the same for the fiscal year because it's the first month of the year. Then we have the operating revenue was 3.1% below July of 2025, and the year-to-date operating revenue, of course, was also 3.1% below FY 2026. And just as a reminder, we're in FY 2027 now, so yay. Happy New Year. July 2026 operating expenses were 9.9% above July 2025, and that remains the same for the fiscal year as well. The year-to-date operating revenues were $179,000 below budget, while operating expenses were $753,000 below budget. And with that, I will take any questions that you have through page 38.
Any questions for Carl? Okay, thank you, Carl. Now we'll move on to action items. The first action item is to consider Resolution 2026-12, Consolidated Vehicle Procurement Program Grant Application. Does anyone have questions for the staff?
If you don't mind, I'll start with because, excuse me, I think at least for Mark, and maybe even for George, I can't remember, this is probably the first time that you've seen the CVP program come in front of you, which is the Illinois Consolidated Vehicle Procurement Program. We used to do it annually, but there has been a drought or a deficit of these funds over the last several years, and so we have never had the opportunity to apply for these vehicles. But this Consolidated Vehicle Program is, it's federally funded, but the federal funds go to the state, and then the state uses these funds to divvy up vehicle procurement through transit systems all across the state. And generally, actually always, those vehicles are paratransit vehicles, demand response vehicles. And so we just get those vehicles. There's no local share, but we also don't get to choose what kind of vehicle. We get the vehicle that they give us, but it's worthwhile because they're generally decent vehicles, and there's no cost to the district for procuring them. So this is the first year in quite a while that the state has, or that the state and the federal government combined have been able to put this program together. And so part of the requirement is that we had the public hearing that you mentioned at the very outset, and then now you need to pass a resolution authorizing staff to submit the application for the vehicles. So with that, I'll let Ashley take over, or if you have any questions, we can field those.
Are there any questions?
Well, I recall from my earlier service on the board, I recall from my earlier service on the board that we had some sort of joint procurement arrangement with other cities, some around the state and some elsewhere. Do we still have that sort of operating of purchase agreement?
Yeah, that's pretty different, though the answer to your question is up until very recently we did. We just had a 5-year contract expire that had multiple transit agencies involved with, and we led that procurement, but it was a consortium that we assembled and put together for this procurement, and our procurement office, primarily Victoria Carrington, was the lead on that. But that 5-year contract just expired. And we really we kind of stopped using that contract because the market has shifted in some pretty dramatic fashions over the last 5 years. So we predominantly buy off of, this will probably surprise you, but we generally buy off of the state of Washington contract, and so the state of Washington goes out to bid, and then they have a consolidated vehicle program that they opened up to the entire country. And so the Federal Transit Administration, the FTA, they said we prefer it if agencies pull vehicles off of state contracts, and Washington is kind of the gold standard for states doing this, meeting all the federal requirements. And so our procurement team has just been using that state contract. So we went from a contract that we put together, a bid that we put together, and we just had 3 or 4 agencies involved, to a contract that the state of Washington is using, and the entire country, state of Washington managed, and the entire country is using to buy vehicles off of.
Thank you.
Any other discussion or questions? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Yeah, we need a motion first.
I make a motion. Second.
I'm sorry, go ahead. You moved and seconded?
Yeah, I was moving to approve the resolution.
Okay. Seconded, okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend a roll call vote.
Yes, sorry, I'm on a roll today. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Brown,
Yes.
Fasella,
Yes.
Friedman. Ula,
Yes.
Barnes.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, our final action item is to consider the Illinois Terminal Expansion Project Architecture and Engineering Contract. Are there any questions for the staff? Carl, Ashley, anything to add?
I think we were prepared to kind of bring everybody up to speed on this, if that's okay. As you know, the Illinois Terminal Expansion Project has been a long gestating project for about 13 years, and we finally are at the point where we're bringing a contract to you to award that will start the architectural and engineering services for that project. This is a procurement, a bid that we did almost 5 years ago. And if you remember, that was when we had a different set of development partners that then about a year after the COVID hit, right when we were doing this procurement, and then that first set of developers walked away from the project shortly after that, and the University of Illinois dropped out, and there was some drama there. And so new development partners came in, and it took us several years to bring them up to speed and go through concepts with them and to work on financing. And then just recently they informed us that they cannot assemble the funding that they need to complete the residential portion of the project. So we have decided to just move on without trying to get a third development team and delaying this another 4 or 5 or more years. And we are just doing the expansion and rehabilitation project without a private residential development as a part of the project. We have been communicating with the Federal Transit Administration all over these last 5 years, and they have concurred with us that we can because of extenuating circumstances that we had, the competitive procurement that we did almost 5 years ago is still, we're authorized to still award a contract off of that procurement. And so that is what we are bringing to you today. The evaluation team evaluated the proposers, selected this team, and this is the contract that we're bringing to you. Of course, the costs have increased over the intervening 5 years because life and economics and all of that, but this is still essentially the same contract and the same team that they proposed to us those many years ago. So Ashley, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Sure, I'll just add a couple things. So Stantec, the selected firm, has been working with us throughout this process. I think I noted in the memo that in 2023 they held a preliminary design charrette to help us work through some initial design ideas. And so they have been doing some preparatory work all throughout this time, even though they haven't been officially awarded a contract. Given that, like Carl mentioned, FTA is supportive of us moving forward with this contract. And in fact, we have been getting some pressure to move forward with spending down these grant funds because they were awarded now 7 years ago in 2019. And so there is some pressure for us to use this award before it is withdrawn from us. And then lastly, I'll mention Carl did send the full scope of work to the trustees a couple weeks ago. So you do have some sense of the larger overview of the work included in the contract. And I just wanted to note that some of the local subs have attended here today from Architectural Expressions, Chastain, and Clark Dietz. And so as we discussed, I just wanted to note that in case there are any specific questions for any of the local subs included in the contract. Local subs do account for approximately 44% of the overall contract cost. Is Merlin on the line as well? And then Merlin, our main contact from Stantec, the prime contractor, is also on the line if there are specific questions. So with that, I think we can open it up to additional questions.
Bill?
Well, I've talked with Carl a lot about this, and I think I spoke on this probably at length 5 years ago when we selected the firm, and I think it's good to stick with where we're at. We've put a lot of work in this, and we need to move forward, but I do feel like it's really important. I'm glad that we have local subs on this, and I think architecture engineering is one of the very few areas under FTA rules that we're allowed to express a local preference, and I think the FTA, recognizes that having local people that are familiar with various authorities having jurisdiction over the work being done, being familiar with local subcontractors for construction, and just kind of being able to be present on a regular basis while construction is going on, if there's changes, if measurements need to be retaken, et cetera. I'm very glad that we have local subs on this, and I think it's really important for staff to bear in mind, trying to focus on keeping some of these projects with local talent whenever we can. And when we don't have the expertise to fully take on large projects doing like this, where at the very least we have a local engineer and a local architecture firm that are bolted on to somebody national, and maybe the experience that those firms gain from working on this project with somebody national that does transit could lead to, future opportunities for those local firms in similar projects across the country. So thank you for all your work on this.
Yeah, I'll just tag on real quickly. Phil, I appreciate your comments. As a result of your consistent comments over the last several years, when we did this procurement, we did ask for proposers to include local team members, and so they all did that, and Stantec included not only the three that are here that Ashley mentioned, but another one, Kaskaskia. So we have four local firms, and I think we're being told that they're doing about 44% of the total work, and Architectural Expressions, Brian Kessler is here. They're literally right across the street from here. So you talk about being able to walk here and put their eyeballs on a problem. Brian's got walking shoes that he keeps with him all the time, and he can be here in seconds. So I think the staff at least feels really good about our efforts to comply with your request, which I think you've been really reasonable with your requests, and I think we have assembled a really good team. I do want to just mention Stantec and Merlin, who Ashley said is on the call. Merlin has been doing transit-only projects for the last 20 or so years. So he's a specialist in architectural work with public transit projects, and so that we felt like was a real benefit. And then in addition to that, because he has that experience, he understands the complications that we're going to be dealing with when we get invoices from the contractors. Those have to be pulled apart because part of those invoices will be eligible for federal funds, part of them will be eligible for state funds, and then part of them will be funded with local funds. And so the architect, as project manager, has to be able to know what is eligible for all of those things. And while we love our local architects, they don't have a lot of experience with the Federal Transit Administration, and so we felt like we really needed somebody who understood the nuts and bolts of those types of requirements really, really well, and Merlin does. So yeah, staff feels really good about this contract, and we're, as you can imagine, super excited about finally getting the ball rolling.
Any other comments, questions?
Yes. Carl, What are we being asked to approve exactly? The professional services agreement, which begins on page 49? Or everything from 43 to 49, or what?
The 43 through 48 is just information for you. There's a procurement memo and then a memo kind of describing the ask that we are bringing to you today. And so the actual professional services agreement starts on 49, as you mentioned, and that goes through page 59. So technically, that's the contract that we're asking to be approved.
Okay. One point for future reference. I can't read this thing without a magnifying glass. I would appreciate if you would use.
Yeah, I'm with you. Hopefully Merlin is listening because this is his contract, and I almost needed a magnifying glass to look at it too. So,
Yeah.
that.
A largest size font would be in order.
Yep, noted.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I would just note that water is dripping through the roof on my pants, So is it a real thing, or you just made it happen so that we understand the importance of this project?
You found us out. Yes, we planned that. Okay. No, that is condensation from the HVAC system. The roof is not leaking. The building manager is aware of it. But it's irony only. But we do feel like after 27 years, we do need to give some tender, loving care to the building and rehab the HVAC systems, as well as this lovely carpet and some other things in the building. So yeah, it is proof that we need to do that, but we didn't plan it that way.
Can I just ask one more question? So pending approval of this contract, do we have an overall timeline going forward of the steps in the plan, or is that to be determined after approval?
Ashley?
There is a timeline in the overall scope that Carl sent. I don't know exactly what page it is off the top of my head, but they did provide, the Stantec team provided like a Gantt chart of all the different task orders and approximately when they would take place and how long each would take place. I think the entire contract, I think they're assuming it starts approximately mid-September, will take about 12 months until bidding construction. And so then from that point on, it's another, I think, 18 to 24, depending on the contractor's timeline.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I lost audio during that. Ashley, is there? I have the schedule up if you'd like for me to kind of go over it at a high level.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay. So with the approval of the contract, and thank you all for listening and entertaining, the idea is that we would start here in a couple weeks and basically mid-September with what we call pre-design services. So that's contracting with all of our subconsultants, traveling to Champaign and doing a kickoff meeting with MTD and the city of Champaign to talk about the overall direction of where the project is from where we left it several years ago. We have schematic design starting after that and being complete by essentially Thanksgiving, which would then include an updated cost estimate on the schematic design drawings, and then subsequent reviews by the MTD staff. And then we have design development, which is task 3, is about 12 weeks long, which takes us into mid-February. Also then with an updated cost estimate is one of the key deliverables to that package. And then we have construction documents kicking off in mid-February, lasting about 13 weeks, which takes us into early May, basically the second week of May of next year. Also, again, with an updated cost estimate. And then, that kicks us off into basically submitting for building permit and also MTD putting the project out to bid. And so we're estimating that then that whole next step would take potentially about half a year. It really depends on the building department's permitting process and timeline, which one of the things we'll do in that kickoff meeting is really define, what they need for the permitting process. And then we have, construction starting in basically, spring of 2028. And we've just estimated it now. We're not building professionals. So we've estimated construction to be essentially about 1 year and 8 months, maybe 10 months. But we're going to lean on the general contractor to provide their construction schedule as part of the bid package requirements, along with how they're going to meet Buy America certification, which is required with the FTA funding.
Okay, thank you.
And that was Merlin Maley with Stantec. He'll be the prime architect and contact for the project.
Yeah, apologize, I didn't introduce myself. Yeah, I'll be the senior principal in charge, architect of record on the expansion, and then teamed with Brian Kessler. AEX will be leading the Illinois terminal renovation work on the architecture side. So we're going to start with the overall design concept and schematic design for not only the expansion, but the terminal work itself and touching all 4 floors. And then Brian and his team will lead the development of the terminal renovation work. And then he'll also be leading the construction administration effort with our participation as well, with basically, Brian on site, his team on site weekly. We plan on being on site monthly to observe the work and the progress.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments at this point? In that case, is there a motion to approve the Illinois Terminal Expansion Project Architecture and Engineering Contract?
So moved.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Blyle,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Fasella,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Ula,
Yes.
Barnes.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, the next regular Board of Trustees meeting will be on Wednesday, September 30th, 2026 at 3 p.m. here at the Illinois Terminal, 45 East University in Champaign. We're going to adjourn to closed session to discuss the potential purchase or lease of real properties, followed by adjournment. Do I hear a motion to adjourn into closed session?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Blyle,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Fasella,
Yes.
Friedman, Ula,
Yes.
Barnes.
Yes?
Motion carries.
Okay, there will be no further action by the board. We'll take a 5-minute recess and then begin the closed session.